All right, welcome to this version of the database team meeting. So jumping right into it, it's the last week of the milestone. So let's look at the milestone board, review the issues, make sure they're all up to date. So Andreas, you're first.
Yeah, there is an approach I'm trying right now, and just had a discussion with Yanis about it. And I'm going to work on this a little bit more this week.
Okay. This one is not assigned. I will assign it to me. So I think we've identified some common themes, and this one will carry over. Because while we've identified some ideas, we don't have any solutions on this one. So not going to close this week. Let's see, 6, Pat.
Yeah, so there's a couple MRs for this out there now. The first of which, once I tested it on the database labs, it's not going to work in production because there has to rebuild the indexes. It just is not going to work. So I think really, like, after kind of building that spreadsheet and seeing the changes, that this is going to be like a significantly larger to address than I thought initially. There's a lot of changes here. I don't know how realistic it even is to maybe make some of these changes, or the migrations might be fairly involved. So I don't know, it's probably worth having a conversation about that, maybe. But it's not going to be straightforward, like to just have a couple migrations and that's going to solve it and then everything's better.
Okay, so it sounds like larger discussion on this one needs to take place about the approach. All right. Yeah, I think pick it up asynchronously, and if we need to, we can pick it up on Thursday. All right. The next one is also Pat.
Yeah, this one, so the MR to add the helpers is in review right now. And I'm going to start working this week on, there was one piece that we sort of overlooked or didn't really know was an issue, or at least I didn't know was an issue, which is adding the indexes to the partition table, which we need to have a new helper for. So I'm going to be working on that this week, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I can get that, done today or tomorrow, and we can get it through.
Okay. See the design decisions, documentation doesn't look like assigned or started. We'll just carry that over. That one, same thing. Planning, the next one. Yanis, you're up.
Yeah, it's in review. Already reviewed by Andreas. I'm waiting for a final review, and it will be done by tomorrow.
Okay.
Released.
And this one has been in review for 1.5 weeks now, so I'm hopeful it's going to merge today. It's been just a long back and forth review process most of the time.
Okay.
Cronjob is finished from our side. It should have been installed to staging, but that didn't work out as expected, and I'm waiting for feedback from the SRE team on that. Didn't want to mess with the playlist myself. Maybe that happens today.
All right. Yanis?
Yep, this one depends on the previous one. The moment the other one is merged to master, I will have to change some specs because those new migration helpers depend on the other ones. And then, it will be released this week.
Okay.
That one I haven't really started with. I wanted to pick it yesterday, but didn't actually start it. I hope to have some time this week to do that actually.
Okay.
So I would rather keep it.
All right. Sounds good. Yanis?
Yeah, I would love to do that. Let's see.
Same for the next one?
Unfortunately, yeah, this one most probably we won't make it because we had all the work for the other ones. But we will start it, but we will finish it next in 13.6. I think that we went to another.
What happened?
Yeah, something weird happened there.
It was my issue, my
Yep.
fault.
It's all right. We were here. Oh, has anybody looked at this one? Nope. All right. Do we need to keep this one open, or is this the data dictionary one? No, it's data dictionary. All right. Move that over. That's probably this. We're not going to get this done in time to check performance improvement, correct? And I'll rearrange 13.6 after. I'm not sure about this one.
No, I haven't looked into that. Don't know if anybody has a. I think the remaining issues are mostly non-deliverables, as far as I can see.
Okay. Got two more deliverables in here, both Giannis.
Yeah, most probably they will go next week, especially the namespaces. I don't think that it can make it for this. This is this thing that we have to we have to implement at some point, but it always is scheduled last.
Okay. Sounds good. And then sounds like these, if anybody has time, we'll just pick them up. Yep. All right. Is there anything that is not showing up in here that folks are working on? So with that being said, 13.6 column now is a mess because I just moved a bunch of stuff over. So I will clean that up later. For planning for 13.6, the major initiatives shouldn't be any surprise. So got the events table partitioning. This is probably not the best title. We can rename it. It's a topic we'll talk about next. Testing migrations before they get to staging by providing developers access with data in various different ways. And then these were the two topics that Giannis suggested we bring into 13.6. That's what we have planned for 13.6. Any questions on any of that? No.
There is one more topic, it's the re-indexing that we should still make a little bit more smarter in terms of selecting the right indexes.
Right. Is that issue already in 13.6?
I think it is. Let me find it.
Is it this one?
Nope, the next one.
Okay. It seems like we have an awful lot in 13.6. Those will probably be some things that need to be moved out. And we can talk about that asynchronously. And I will just, I'll update the planning issue with suggestions. And if anybody else has any suggestions, feel free to throw them in there.
I think that
too.
Also this query updates tracking for GitLab.com, it will be small, but I think that we should add it in 13.6. So it's tracking the same updates that we track for self-hosted instances, but for GitLab.com, so that we can compare and have in the same dashboard the two of them.
Okay. All right. All right, and then Andreas, you had a question about how do we prioritize setting up testing database lab CE for migration testing. I threw in some ideas, but did you have some thoughts on that?
No, it was just a follow-up to our conversation from last week. But it sounds like we would break things down. But is that something that we should also spend time on, or last week we were wondering if we wanted to spend like a couple of days trying that out to get a better understanding of the efforts or the limitations of that. Is that something that we want to do, or are we pushing that out?
I think it's something we want to do. It's a high enough priority item that we need to solve, and I don't think there's an easy short path to solving that migration problem. So I think we're going to be the ones. Well, I know we're the ones that should be leading the charge on that one. So I threw some ideas down below. I know we've talked about starting with manual migrations while we continue to work with Nick on a more automated process. Nick or something else, like if we ultimately find a competitor piece of software that'll do the same thing. But I added my thoughts down below. So I'm thinking maybe we as a team figure out how to test migrations manually against database labs in a safe way, roll it out to the maintainers, and continue to update docs, steps, automate whatever we need to on the initial manual steps so that developers have an idea on how to do it if and when we get to the point where we can share licensing on database labs CE. I've written up the issue to purchase licenses. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go through. I'm not sure how the pricing is going to be taken by upper management, but there is a big focus on making sure we don't have these migration problems anymore. So I have to think if we provide some kind of solution that it will get approved. So, and this is we already have the software now. We know we can do the manual tests. We just know that there's some things we need to be aware of. So this seems like the best first iteration in my mind. But if someone has a better idea or a different idea, let's talk about it. So do these steps make sense the way they are? Or are there any
just to
concerns?
clarify, the idea is that we would be using the open source edition of Database Labs for the testing, right? So that's something we would have to set up ourselves.
Yeah.
Would it be faster to use the use Postgres AI and the thin cloning tools that they have? I mean, we already have that tool available to us right now, right? Sorry, I didn't notice the distinction of what you were saying. I was thinking it was the tools we already have for spinning up the thin clone quickly.
Yeah, my understanding was that the Postgres AI solution is going to come to an end if we don't manage to extend the license, right?
Yep.
And that we lose that functionality. So there's two concerns, or this is one concern, like how do we continue to provide this thin cloning ability?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we could use the open source database labs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other concern is how do we enable database maintainers or ourselves, for starters, to run migrations in a safe environment, like we talked about this isolated instance or something like that. So those are two separate things.
So I'm going to make an assumption here. It would be faster if we could start with the assumption that we can continue to use Postgres AI regardless of the license wall on November 27th, right? So I'd say we start with that and let me figure out the licensing. We're no worse off than, if a month from now we decide we're not going to move forward with that, then we can start testing with the open source. So I'd say work with the tools that we have for now, because even then, that'll give us some ideas on making sure that we have a safe environment if we have to revert back to the open source, correct? We're going to encounter the same problems anyway. So let's proceed with the assumption that we're going to get the licensing in 6 weeks or 2 months, whatever the timeline is, so that we can start with what we have now instead of taking a step back.
Okay, so we're talking about setting up a instance in our GCP project for the database group that we would configure in a way that we are more confident that running database migrations in that environment is safe, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would basically want to give out access to that instance to database maintainers at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we might build some automation around using or hooking up your GDK environment or something like that, where you can run the migrations, hooking that up with the existing Postgres AI instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if we need to rename or rework that epic that I have out there, that's fine. Please feel free to change it however you see fit. So the instance that we have right now that's running Postgres AI on it, you just mentioned we'd have to set up another instance to make sure it's locked down, or can we just lock down the one instance that's already running Postgres AI?
It would probably make sense to keep it separate.
Okay.
Yeah. It
Not
also
like
has
most
a
of the database
mailer.
instance.
It has a mailer. It has access to the outside world. So most probably we will want to set up an instance without SMTP running or access to the outside world other than the connection, just to be safe.
Okay. Right, so we need a separate issue for that. Is there like an access request issue or something you need for that? Or is that just an email to Alberto and team, or sorry, SRE team, say, hey, we need a new GCP instance?
Well, so we can start GCP instance ourselves. That's not a problem. We have a dedicated project for us.
Okay.
It would be kind of experimental, or you know, it would basically connect to the other GCP instance for, you know, where Postgres AI runs.
Mm-hmm.
But basically what we're doing is, like, instead of having everybody use their local development environment and connect to Postgres AI, we would basically provide them a GCP instance that we think is configured properly with the GDK environment, so they can do the same thing, but on this isolated instance, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that will be a test, a first step, because that won't work with, it will work for one person at a time, because they will have to check out their branch. Or we will think about it afterwards. But yeah, we can start with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, this is with database labs with Postgres AI. And the only difference, if we had to do it ourselves, it will be a new step in front, a long step there, of setting up database labs CE.
Yeah.
And all of that has a lot of, like, infrastructure aspects in it. So if we, you know, if I'm thinking it would make a lot of sense if we had some kind of collaboration on that from and help from the SRE team, if we are going to be serious about setting up database labs and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably doesn't make sense if we do that on our own GCP project, and then later on we would need to add auditing and all the same mechanics that SRE has anyways.
So it does not make sense to do it on our own project?
Ultimately, no. what I remember is that each GCP project that basically has abilities to read production data, which this one clearly has, or if we create that instance, each of those needs to be audited and controlled, and might make more sense to align that with whatever we already do in other projects in SRE.
So our project that we already have with GCP, the database team project, has it already been audited?
I don't think so. Just a regular team kind of space. And if, for example, if we wanted to set up database labs, open source edition, then this instance has to have access to the object storage from production, where we can read and replicate the production database. And that is kind of deemed a critical resource that needs auditing and all that.
Right. That makes sense. I was just wondering what we could start actually working on, so we understand what we don't know, right, and start writing it down, so that we, when we actually go to request, I guess, the long-term GCP project for auditing, then we better understand what we're doing, so we're better set up for success down the road. But sounds like we need to have that audit first if we're doing things the right way.
I think if we wanted to have Database Labs Community Edition, then I would rather approach it that way. Together with SRE, figure out how to set that up. For creating that isolated instance, I mean, it's probably not much different than if everybody was using their local development environment. So maybe that's not too much of an issue in that sense.
So what are the, let's put down the list down here, so to you. Which group is it that we need to talk about auditing? Is it security, so like Andrew Kelly and folks, or is it a different group, security and compliance? I know there's two different groups.
I don't know, I would have asked SRE teams
Okay.
how to approach it.
So once we have that, are we going to audit our instance, or are we going to ask for a new instance to be set up? Or does it really matter?
Is that for database labs or for
the
isolated instance?
What's the difference? So I guess database labs is just to get access to the data. Are we not going to use that same thing for the isolated instance? Is that we're not going to build it up into that isolated instance?
I'm not sure what to think about the security side of this. I know there is, whenever you touch production data in the GCP resource, it needs auditing to some extent, but I don't know how that is implemented or which team owns that or whatever. That's something I don't know. I think just from the many things I don't know, I think creating an isolated instance and using that as a development environment is probably fine. Right? It's the same thing that I can do on my computer, I can do that on that instance, and I know it's not going to talk to the outside world. So that's probably something we can do. Replicating the production database into a GCP project that we own, probably nothing that we can do on our own. But that's from my very rough understanding of what they do for auditing and security.
Okay. What else do we need to do to get this going?
Yeah, set up an isolated GCP instance, install GDK.
Sorry, are we going to do the first step? Didn't we agree that we are going to work with the Postgres AI server? So until the license with Postgres AI ends, we are going to work with the Postgres AI instance and just SSH there. So we don't need until the end of November. We don't need any setup of our own database. Am I right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first step at the moment for the next 1 month and a half is to just set up a GCP instance that will connect to the Postgres AI instance, like we connect from our own dev machines.
Mm-hmm.
It will have access to production data, but it won't have the full data Postgres, the full dump from production. And then we will have to, as a database team, to figure out how we are going to give access to that GCP instance, if we are going to give access to others or not. Or if we are going to, let's say something crazy, build an automated job that runs the test or something like that. But those are the 2 steps at the moment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we cannot renew the Postgres AI license, we are going to set up our own GCP instance like Postgres AI. Yeah. Okay. But that's in 2 milestones, 13.8.
I know those are big generic steps, but that makes sense.
And you missed the profit, Bullet.
Okay.
What do we do about the compliance part? Do we need to figure out if we can run database migrations on that data? How can we figure that out? Is there a team that we would approach, or do we just do it?
Let me figure that one out. I'm thinking, I mean, this is something that we do every step of the way anyway, so this isn't outside what we'd normally do on a deployment. I don't see it as testing against production data. We're applying the steps to the development process. So let me figure it out. I'll figure out who to reach out to.
And maybe we missed the make the server safe there together with install JDK, what we were discussing previously. So it's like install JDK and ensure that the server is safe. Safe with respect to if we run a migration that sends emails are not sent or updates, something in the third-party service. Am I right, Andreas?
Probably just limit the access to the public network to SSH or so.
Yeah, it should not be that tricky, but it's not really. Because from the comments I've read in the Postgres AI issue, a lot of people, that's what they are afraid about in their own local dev environments, like running a migration, starting sending mails to our customers. for users.
Okay. So at some point in time, somewhere in this team, we'll need to start breaking these down into issues so we can figure out how to schedule them. For now, move on, although there's nothing else on the agenda. Is there anything else folks wanted to cover? I think we got goals covered for this week, wrap up the issues in 13.5 and start looking forward to 13.6. So any other topics folks want to cover for today? Nope. All right. If there's nothing else, I'm going to jump off then. Thanks, everybody.
See you later.